Sound check test 1 2 1 2. Sound check 1 2 1 2. Sound check test 1 2. Live there, here, there, and here. Mic check 1 2 1 2. Just move this back a little bit. Mic check 1 2 1 2. Sound check 1 2 1 2. Trying to get my cameras more aligned here so I can have a more direct view of everything happening as you are coming in. Y'all can shout yourselves out. Tell me where y'all checking in from. Tell me locations. Give me a city or a state if I may not know your city. Tell me where you are checking in from, or your country if you are outside of the USA. Tell me where you are checking in from. We're going to get into it in 30 seconds. I'm just making sure all my streams are working properly. Who knows if YouTube is working properly? YouTube's been janky for the last 2 weeks. But Rumble, we're on. X, we are on. Facebook, we are on. LinkedIn, yes, we are on LinkedIn. What's going on? Instagram, good morning over there. We got the South Bronx in the house. Shout out to the South Bronx. We got Jacksonville, Florida in the building. My camera for YouTube is a little bit covering the Instagram camera, but I can see it when it scrolls up a little bit. TikTok, what's going on? Good morning. Oh, y'all checking me from the For You page. Shout out to the For You page, putting me back on again. Hopefully we can stay on it. Nikki, good morning. Checking in from Connecticut. Nikki, I think I made you a moderator already. Marky Man, Sacramento. Shout out to Sacramento. Shout out to the For You page. Moderators, everybody on TikTok specifically, if you are a moderator for this stream, I need you to moderate. All right, please moderate. Moderate. So if somebody's in here talking crazy in the comments, even before I start looking at the comments, or somebody is trolling the comments, get rid of them. Now, do not get rid of somebody just because they disagree with me. Disagreements are allowed and actually welcomed and even encouraged. But if somebody's talking crazy in the comments or trolling the comments, get them out of there. No trolling allowed in my comments. If someone keeps posting the same comment over and over again, copy, paste it, get rid of them. So moderators, just get rid of these people, because they're the ones who end up trying to get my lives flagged on TikTok. And TikTok has a very sensitive system for whatever reason. They shouldn't have a sensitive system, but they do. So this is what we're going to talk about here today. We're going to talk about how the U.S. government should operate. So yesterday, I was talking about the reasons why many American citizens do not trust the United States government. And there are some legitimate reasons for that. I went through a lot of them yesterday in a live. I think I went 2.5 hours yesterday. Today, maybe we'll go that long, maybe not. And what we're going to talk about is how the government should operate. And I'm looking over on Instagram. I see Coach P says how government should work. You was preaching MAGA not long ago. No, sir. You never heard me preach MAGA. I don't even know what that means. Do you mean like a supporter of? I have no political affiliations and never have. And Coach P, I don't know where you got that misinformation. I don't even like that term, but let's just call it misinformation. I've talked about both sides of the political aisle, and I do these lives for an hour to 2 hours every single day. So I don't know where you've been, but please don't come in here with that childishness. If you disagree with something that I say, then go ahead and disagree openly with some substance. But if you have nothing of substance to add, remain silent. And all that said, let me continue where I was. And yesterday we were talking about why people distrust the government, not any side of the government, not Democrats, not Republicans, but just the government, period. And there are legitimate reasons for that as American citizens, regardless of your political affiliation, or even if you don't vote at all. And what we're going to talk about here today is some things that the average citizen, the everyday citizen, the voter, would want the government to do. Of course, by my estimation, I'm not speaking for all Americans, but you all can tell me as I get into these points if you agree or you disagree with the things I'm going to say here today. Before we get into that, let me introduce myself. And then I want to talk a little bit about Trump's joint, what was that called? The thing he did yesterday, the joint address. I guess that's what they call it, the joint address. It was technically not a State of the Union. It was just a joint address because I guess he can't give a State of the Union because he just got into office again, what, 6 weeks ago, whatever it was. We'll get into that in one moment. But first of all, introducing myself. My name is Dre Baldwin. Many know me as Dre all day, former 9-year professional athlete, author of 40 books, done 4 TEDx talks, create this brand company called Work on Your Game. We help professional entrepreneurs systematize and scale their businesses from the 6-figure level to the 7-figure level. YouTube looks like things are working pretty well on YouTube right now. You want to learn more about me and what I do professionally, you can just go to Work on Your Game University or DreUniversity.com. And again, my moderators over on TikTok, please take out any trash that needs to be taken out in the comment section here. Again, don't kick anybody out for disagreement, but if they're trolling the comments, then they got to go. All right, so everybody knows that. All right, it's been said from the beginning, and I may say it again, but I may not. But that's the rule, whether I say it again or not. So the topic here today, first of all, let's talk about this joint address. I guess they call it a joint address, whatever he did last night that you saw. If you didn't see it, you should go watch it. Those of you who didn't hear Trump's address last night, I didn't stay up to watch it. I think it started at like 9 o'clock or something like that. I don't stay up that late. I go to bed early. But I pulled it up on YouTube and listened to the whole thing just this morning, right before I started this live stream. So I listened to the whole thing and what Trump had to say. And a couple of things just on that alone is the first thing is that the Democrats, anytime you watch one of these addresses that the president gives to everybody, they all do the same thing. So whoever's in power, let's say when Joe Biden was the president or even Obama was the president, whenever he makes a statement, he says his thing, all the Democrats stand up and clap for everything he says. So you stand up like 50 times over the course of his speeches. Every time he makes a point, everybody has to stand up and give him a standing ovation for what he says. So you might get tired of standing up and sitting down if you're at one of these events, if your side is in power. And then the other side, who is against the current president, they don't move. And when everybody else is clapping, so what you see is half the audience standing up clapping and half the audience not clapping. We can start right there. Let's just start right there, because the topic here today is how the U.S. government should operate. And I talked about this yesterday, why American citizens do not trust the U.S. government. This is one of the reasons what you see when the president gives these speeches, because yesterday with Trump giving a speech, now we know he's on the Republican side. So every time he made a point, all the Republicans stood up and clapped, and the Democrats just sat there and said absolutely nothing. And some of them had these little signs. We'll get to the signs in a second. This is one of the reasons why we don't trust the government, because they're just playing partisan games. There is no way, whether the president is a Democrat or Republican, that the president, every single point he made over the course of a 3 or 2 hour speech, that there's not a single thing that the other side can't co-sign and say, you know what, that's a good idea too. Not one. The whole thing. There's not one thing that he said in that whole speech that Donald Trump said that the Democrats can't say, you know what, we're for that too. I can clap for that. Not one thing in the whole speech. And flipping it around again, this is not about Democrat or Republican. That's the whole point here. Is when Joe Biden was president, it's not one thing the Republicans could clap for. Not one thing out of the whole speech. That doesn't make any sense. So this is one of the main reasons why people don't trust, is the partisan politics. The Democrats are just going to trash anything the Republicans do, and the Republicans are going to trash anything the Democrats do. Whoever's in charge, they're going to say their stuff, and then the other side is going to act like they hate every single thing the other side is doing. Again, how is that serving us? That's the question. How is that serving the average, everyday voting citizen? How is that serving us? It's not. This is all political theater that these people are doing, and it's not that in the process of doing it, we may not get some help and some benefits and whatever policies you agree with, whatever laws you want the legislature to pass. Maybe those things will occur. But at the same time, we can see that they're front and centering the partisan situation. All right, I'm a Democrat, so I can't clap for anything he says. Or I'm a Republican. If the Democrats are in charge, I won't clap for anything that they say. Y'all remember the famous clip years ago when Donald Trump finished giving a speech? It might have been the State of the Union. I don't know what speech it was, probably a State of the Union. And when he finished, Nancy Pelosi was sitting behind him and she ripped up the paper right behind him because she knew she was on camera. That's the reason why she did it. Not because not because of what she was actually feeling. Maybe she was feeling it, but it was all for show. All of this stuff is for show. They know that the cameras are on, the Democrats. So they know that they can't clap for anything that Donald Trump says because they're supposed to be resist everything that he does. And again, this is the first point right here, is that they're all playing this game that has nothing to do with us, that has nothing to do with serving us. And then when the speech is over, they get to give their rebuttal. I didn't listen to the rebuttal yet, but I am going to listen to the rebuttal. So basically, after Trump gives a speech like that, or any president gives a speech like that, the leader of the other side of the movement, they come on and they basically say, all right, these are all the things the president got wrong. And then they give their kind of retort to everything that he said. And I didn't listen to that yet, but I'm going to listen to that. The problem with all of this, because all they're going to do, whenever they go up and give that, and I listen to it, they're basically going to counter every point that he made. And they're going to say, well, the fact is this, he said this, that's a lie. The fact is that. And then you go back and forth. And by the time you get done listening to everything that they say, you don't really know who to trust. You don't really know who to pay attention to. You don't really know who actually has the right point and who has the wrong point in the whole situation. And all of this is a shell game that is going over the head of the average voting citizen. So with all that said, Coach P, you got to go. All right, don't be in my comments like a child. All right, we don't deal with children over here. All right, please, I don't know how you found me or who you are, but stay out of my space. So we got Coach P out of here on Instagram. This person who is get this person out of here. All right, so they're gone. So now back to what we were talking about here. I had a troll on Instagram. I have a moderator on Instagram, so I had to do it myself. So anyway, the other thing the Democrats were doing is that they had these little signs. I didn't see them holding them up that much, or at least they didn't show it on camera. I was watching I believe it was the Fox News YouTube channel that had the video up. The first one I saw when I scrolled through yesterday. And I saw them holding the sign like in their laps, but they weren't holding it up, at least as much as they showed it on camera. Is that it was one side of it that said, I think it was one side that said lie. Like if he said something they thought was a lie, they would just hold the sign up. They wouldn't say anything. They would just hold the sign up. And then on the other side, I saw a few Democrats sitting down when they showed them on camera, and they were holding the sign. And on the front of it said Musk steals. So I guess that's the attack on Elon Musk. And Trump did shout out Elon Musk a couple of times in his speech. My question for that is, Democrats, that's the best y'all can come up with? And I know they probably not watching this, but this is my question. Anybody who's a Democrat supporter, any of you who saw the speech last night, is that the best counter attack they could come up with for this presentation that Trump was doing? Is every time he says something, just hold up a little sign that says, lie, you're wrong, or Musk steals. Did they even need to do that? Now, how much time and effort and money did they put into putting those signs together? And what exactly did they accomplish? And again, this goes right back to my point that I talked about a lot yesterday. This is partisan politics. How is this serving you? If you voted for one of those Democrats who was sitting in the crowd last night with that sign, what does that do to help you? How is that moving you forward? Are you proud of the fact that you voted for that person, that they're in D.C. representing you because they were holding up a sign to show their resistance to Trump? We know your resistance. We know you're on the Democratic side. We see you on social media every day. We hear you when the cameras come on. We see you not standing up and not clapping for anything that he says. What's the point of the sign? Like, this is childish. And again, this is all they're serving themselves by doing that, because all they get to do is they get on the internet and say, see, I got the sign. And this makes no sense. Also, Mrs. Jasmine Crockett from Texas, congressperson, she put out a video. I don't know if y'all saw this video on social media. I believe the video was on TikTok, but then it got downloaded and posted to X. I don't scroll on TikTok. Did y'all see this video with Jasmine Crockett for her? She called it the State of Disunion address that was going to be like the rebuttal to anything that Trump said. And she put out a little promo video to promote it. Did y'all see that video? Did y'all see that? That was, I'm not going to show y'all the video, but y'all should go look up this video, because what she put out, I'm like, what is this? And what is she allegedly, what is she doing? That's the question that I have. I got to find a reply, because I remember I posted a reply to this morning. Where is it? It's not showing up in my feed. I know I responded to this, but where is it? It's not coming up. And no, I don't see it. I don't know what happened. Maybe it got deleted. I don't know. Maybe she blocked me. I don't know. I don't think so. I hope not. But anyway, it was a video of her. She was like doing some dances, and she had a couple other women next to her, and she was doing dances and stepping. And this was a whole, I guess, a promo to promote that she's going to go on, who knows, TikTok, YouTube, whatever, as a rebuttal to what Donald Trump is doing. And again, Democratic voters, those of you who are in support of Ms. Crockett and you are in resistance to Donald Trump, my question to you is this serving you? And if so, how? What is this doing for you? This is where your politicians that you voted for, that you supply a full-time salary doing what they do, this is what they're choosing to do. And this is why my first point here today, I'll get to it in a second, is about these people should not be making a full-time salary doing what they're doing, because then if they want to do some nonsense, okay, well, we're not employing these people. They're coming in here temporarily, they do some stuff and they leave. We don't like them, we vote them out. But these people are making a full-time income. And if someone's making a full-time income off of your money, then you can hold them accountable for every single thing that they do when they're on the clock. Is this true or not? Any of you who runs a business, you have employees. If your employee is on the clock, i.e. work time, and they're doing something that you're not okay with, do you hold them accountable, or is it just, we'll just let it go? If you run a business and that money's coming out of your business's bank account, oh, you hold them accountable. Why? Because you're paying for it. You're paying for every single thing that they do in those minutes. So one of the things that I noticed that was interesting, all presidents do this, but I noticed it with Trump, because I just saw the video, is that when Trump was making points about positive things, he will look to the left, which is not the political left, but to his left were the Republicans. And when he wanted to say something like negative, or he wanted to chastise the Democrats, he would look over at them, and he would only look over at them when he was pointing out something bad. Then you heard a little bit of chirping. And who was the guy? Al Green, not the singer Al Green, but I believe this guy's a representative, Al Green. Did y'all see him get kicked out at the beginning of early in the speech? He got kicked out. So he was yelling about something. I don't remember what point Trump had made, but then Al Green starts yelling about it, and he kept yelling, and he wouldn't sit down. And there were a few Democrats who yelled out about certain things, but they would say it and then they would stay quiet. But this guy got kicked out pretty early, and he had a little cane with him, and they kicked him out. And I don't know what the point of that was, other than, again, performing for the cameras. And let me be clear, I'm performing for the camera right now. There's nothing wrong with performing for the camera if you are doing it under your own volition and on your own dime and running your own business. Now, if you're performing for the camera, you're performing for the camera, you're supposed to be representing certain people, whoever voted you into office. Again, what are you doing? So I would assume Mr. Green, I don't know too much about this guy. I would assume he probably, let me see if I can find this guy. Any of you know anything about this guy, Al Green, who got kicked out of the speech last night? So this is Al Green with an E on the end. So again, not Al Green, the singer, but Al Green, I'm assuming he's a congressperson. So 78-year-old Al Green. So this is, somebody else said this about, he's 78 years old and he's trying to shout down Trump. Again, why did he do this? This doesn't really make too much sense. So let me see if I can find. So there's a video of him talking. I recently spoke with Al Green, who was escorted from Trump's speech. I have a chance to answer more questions. So this is before the speech. There's a video of Al Green talking. So I don't know too much about this guy. So I don't see his name popping up. Maybe he's on social media. Maybe he's not. That was kind of ridiculous. He didn't have to go that far. And to be clear again, we've seen people on the Republican side do this. You remember famously when Obama was still president and he said something and he was using flowery language, maybe to deceive. At least the Republicans felt that way. And somebody in a Republican parlor shouted out "lie" right when he was talking. It was really quiet when he did it and everybody heard it. And he kind of got, he had to, what did he have to do? He had to kind of make do for what he did in that situation. And here's the thing that drives home the point of the partisan politics with both sides. They both do this, but right now a Republican is in power. So the Democrats are the ones under the spotlight, especially after what happened with Trump over the last, let's just say the last year plus. Is there was a point in the speech, if y'all didn't see it, that Donald Trump pointed out. How many of you saw the speech? Put yes if you saw it, put no if you didn't see it. So I have an idea how many of you actually saw it. So there was a point in the speech where Donald Trump pointed out this young kid, this black kid, who wanted to be a police officer. He wanted to be a police officer. He had his dad sitting next to him, but he got diagnosed with brain cancer at the age of, I believe, 13 or the age of 8. Maybe he's 13 now, but the age of 8, whatever the age was, or maybe it was 6. He got diagnosed with brain cancer. And Donald Trump points out, hey, this kid is now an honorary police officer. And he had on a little police uniform. So he stood up and got acknowledged, and his dad held him up and he was being acknowledged. And then Donald Trump announced that he also may have wanted to be part of, I believe it was the Secret Service. And then he announces to the kid, and it surprised the kid. You saw the kid's eyes get really big when he said it. He said, we're going to make you an honorary member of the Secret Service, and everybody's all happy. And the kid, I guess a guy from the government comes up and gives him something, puts a little pin on him, and the kid hugs the government guy, whoever it was. The Democrats couldn't clap for that. Democrats, they couldn't clap for that. Even when that happened, they didn't clap. Now, and they gave an extended round of applause to that. That was probably the longest clap, other than for Trump himself when he showed up and when he left. The longest round of applause, other than those 2 times, for the president was for that kid. My question is, the Democrats, they couldn't clap for that? Why couldn't they clap for that? They couldn't clap for a 13-year-old kid who's had a brain cancer, and he was given like 5 or 6 months to live. It's been 5 or 6 years since then. He's still alive. He's an honorary police officer, and he just got honorary Secret Service. How did you not clap for that? Even if I'm a Democrat and I'm anti everything Trump, how could I not clap for that? And this is, I'm telling all of you all of this to drive home my point. This is all partisan politics. This is all for show, and they're all doing it for the cameras. And how could you, just as a person, be so strong playing the political game that you can't even clap for a 13-year-old kid with cancer who got named the honorary Secret Serviceman? That makes no sense. It makes no sense whatsoever. And this is the shady part of politics. And let me be clear, so people don't think that I'm on one side here politically. Had the sides been flipped, would the Republicans have stood up to clap for, let's say Joe Biden brings a kid in and he does the exact same thing? Could the Republicans stand up and clap for that? I would hope to believe that some Republicans can stand up and clap for that. We don't know, because it didn't happen, but I would hope to believe that maybe they would. And by the way, those of you watching me on TikTok right now, it looks like they got me on the For You page here today. Make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel and follow me on Instagram, just in case anything happens on TikTok. Because when I get this many people in my lives, I tend to piss some people off with my opinions. And then somehow, some way, something happens on TikTok, some shenanigans. So make sure y'all follow me in more than one place. The links are in my profile. And moderators, I need y'all to do your thing here. Make sure nobody's trolling our comments. So let's start with I gave you a bunch of points, but the first thing when it comes to how we would want the government to work. And every point that I make here, you all tell me if you agree or you disagree. Number one, I think we can start with something that everybody agrees with: term limits. Term limits. Do y'all agree with term limits? Yes or no? And specifically for people in Congress, term limits. And once you get in, there's a certain amount of time you can be in Congress, and then you got to go. I randomly, about 2 or 3 days ago, I was thinking about people who I remember hearing about. Actually, I might have been listening to a Tupac song. And, in the Tupac song, he says, Bill Clinton, Mr. Bob Dole. So I said, what happened to Bob Dole? Where is he at now? And I looked up Bob Dole via ChatGPT. And they told me that Bob Dole, let me see if I can find this, because it was just a couple of days ago that I looked this up. So let me see. Yeah, Bob Dole. So Bob Dole, he was a guy who worked in politics. Those of you old enough, you're over 30, you probably remember Bob Dole. He was a U.S. senator from Kansas. He was in the Senate from 1969 to 1996. Damn near 30 years this guy was in Congress. And he was a Senate Majority Leader a couple of times. Before that, he was a representative from 61 to 69. So this guy worked in politics from 1961. He worked in politics for 35 years, longer than a lot of people have been alive. And he ran for president in 96, but he lost to Bill Clinton. He passed away in 2021 at 98 years old. How can somebody be working in Congress for 30 years? And this is a point that I keep making over and over again. There are many people working in politics and the government that was never supposed to be a long-term, full-time job in the first place. It's not designed to be that. Many of these people have worked in politics their entire lives. They haven't contributed to society in any other way. Not to say to contribute. Working in government can be a contribution if you're doing something positive. And if you were voted for, the people wanted you to be there. The problem is when they're in there for so long, this is where we get the politics as usual. This is where you get Donald Trump saying, drain the swamp. This is where you get these entrenched politicians who, if you can't get into the network, then how are you ever going to help change anything? And what this guy's just been sitting there for so long because he has so much power and influence and connections, you can't beat him in an election. I'm sure every time that he ran, there were some people who were thinking about, maybe I'll challenge Bob Dole's Senate seat. Nobody could beat him. 35 years. 35 years he's been in there. I believe that most people agree. There's another guy I looked up, actually. Let me talk about this guy as well. Newt Gingrich, who is still alive. He was a Republican congressman, not a senator, but I guess he was a representative, I'm supposing. They didn't call him a senator. I'm guessing he was a representative from 1979 to 1999. So for 20 years, this guy was in the game, and he was more of a strategist type of guy. And they said he led the Republican Revolution, which helped GOP take control of Congress for the first time in decades. And he did several notable things, I guess, to support the Republican cause. And he's still alive, as I believe is what he said. Yeah, he's still alive, and he's active in media and political commentary. I'm bringing these two people up just as an example, but there are many others. You can look at Elizabeth Warren. You can look at Nancy Pelosi. You can look at McCarthy. You can look at even people who have been president: George W. Bush, Kamala Harris, Joe Biden, Barack Obama, Nancy Pelosi, I mentioned, and many others. What's the guy's name? Bernie Sanders. These people have been in politics their entire lives, and because there are no term limits, they can just get in politics and make it a job, and boom, they just stay there. They just build a career the same way you would be a lawyer or a doctor or a teacher. They build an entire career just being in politics. That is not how politics was created by the framers of this country. The framers of this country designed politics to be a volunteer position. Meaning, same way that you go coach your kid's soccer game on a weekend, you would volunteer your time to help the kids out because you got a 10-year-old and he's on the team. So you coach him for 2 years. And then when he graduates off that team, you leave, somebody else comes and coaches the team because their son is on the team. That's the way government is supposed to work. Now, yes, they're making important decisions, but it should be a volunteer position for the specific reason that these people cannot be so entrenched in their job of the government that you get these conflicts of interest. Hey, I could do the thing that's going to support my career, or I could do the thing that's going to support my constituency, the people who voted for me. There should be no possibility of this conflict of interest ever happening. That's the biggest, issue that I believe. Y'all tell me, is that the biggest issue we have in the government? Or would you consider that to be a big issue, that there's this possibility of conflict of interest between serving the people who voted for you and doing the thing that's actually going to help you personally based on your relationships in DC, your relationships with certain lobbyists, your relationships with certain people who have power. This creates this conflict of interest. And this is the reason why, even though many citizens may not be able to explain this in so many words, this is the reason why we have an inherent distrust, because we don't know if the people working in DC are actually doing stuff to help us or they're doing stuff to help themselves. And the only reason that it's even possible that that could be a question is because you can have a full-time career working in DC. You couldn't have a full-time career working in DC. This would not even be, it wouldn't be as possible. And on top of that, why is everybody situated and concentrated in Washington, DC? Most of the people working in Congress, you all understand, like let's see, you got the Supreme Court, they can work in DC because they're a court. So a court is a court, doesn't matter where you're doing it. And you got a president and the people in the presidential administration, the executive branch of the government. But Congress, the legislative branch of the government, every one of these people was elected in a state of the 50 United States. Each one of them was elected in a state to be a representative of the state, either in the Senate or in the House of Representatives. Why are they living and spending most of their time in Washington, D.C. when they're supposed to be representing people in Illinois or Indiana or Nebraska or North Dakota or Wyoming? Why are they living in Washington, D.C.? And of course, we know the answer because they are sitting there all day doing stuff. They're doing DC stuff. The issue I have with this is, again, the fundamental issue is if you got elected to the House of Representatives in the state of Minnesota, because you won your election in Minnesota, why aren't you boots on the ground in Minnesota actually talking to the people who voted for you so you know what they actually need, want, and what they're dealing with? Then you can go to DC and actually advocate for the things that your people want. But if you are not there, looking them in their faces, shaking their hands, how do you even know what's going on? Now, of course, we have the internet these days. You have phones and people can communicate things to you. But at the same time, if I voted you to be I voted you to be the mayor of Miami, but you're always hanging out in West Palm Beach. That doesn't make any sense. We voted you to be the mayor of Miami. You should be in Miami actively doing stuff. All right. It's like we voted Trump to be president. Let's say he's just out of the country all the time doing stuff in other countries. It doesn't make any sense. So the way DC politics has become so bloated that everything is concentrated in Washington, D.C. I explained this a lot yesterday about the concept of lobbyists and how the lobby for certain industries, some of those that you know of, like the big food, big pharma, etc. They just go to DC and they lobby. Basically, they're politicking to get policies and laws and regulations designed to help their industries. And this is how these industries can get out of control, unruly, and how people can come to distrust them because we know it's all about money. This is one of the challenges of having a capitalistic society, which I am in favor of. But being in favor of something does not mean it does not come with costs. The cost of there being a capitalistic society in the United States of America is that people are going to do things to prioritize and incentivize money. When you have a capitalistic system, people are going to prioritize money. So you want to know how big pharma became big pharma, not just pharma, but big pharma, is because of money, because that's what we prioritize here in the United States of America. A lot of people don't know this, but the United States is the only country in the world where pharmaceutical companies can advertise openly. Y'all know that you go to other countries, you won't see commercials for over-the-counter pharmaceuticals. That's not a thing. Or even prescription pharmaceuticals. They're not commercials for those things. You don't see advertisements. You don't see it in the magazines or at the bus stop. You can't do that in other countries. Only here in the United States of America can you openly advertise the sale of pharmaceuticals or the consumption of pharmaceuticals. Now, why is that? It's because we have a capitalistic society that is designed to reward those who focus on generating money. And again, I'm not against the concept of generating money. I am a registered capitalist, as they say. I'm an entrepreneur. And as an entrepreneur, your number one priority is to generate money. So I'm not against the concept of generating money. The trade-off, however, and all of you need to understand that every situation in life has a trade-off. There's no such thing as a perfect scenario. Everything has a trade-off. The trade-off of a capitalistic society is that the focus becomes what makes me money. And that doesn't mean everybody thinks this way, but it does mean this becomes the prevailing idea in damn near any circumstance or situation or entity that you set up, is that people start focusing on the money because the money runs things. Not because every individual thinks money runs things, but any organization you get into, if you want to have some power, you want to have some say, you want to have some influence, you want to make things happen, guess what you need? You need money. Any of you ever worked in politics? We got a lot of people listening to this right now. Any of you ever operated in politics or worked on a campaign or ever run for political office? Anybody in here ever done that? Put yes if you have. You have any experience running for or working on a political campaign or something like that? All of you understand that the only way you win a political campaign is you got to have money, right? If you have no money, you can't win. So people ask me sometimes, Dre, would you ever get into politics? The answer is hell no, I would not get into politics. One reason I wouldn't get into politics is that to be successful in politics in the United States of America, you cannot tell the truth all the time. It's not possible. And it doesn't matter what side of the aisle you're on. If you tell the truth all the time, you can't win an election because this is just simple human nature. I just told you everything in life has a trade-off. So anything that I promise, I don't care if I'm running for like city council in some small district in South Florida. If I tell the truth to the voters, like, hey, all right, this is what we'll do. Yes, we will rebuild the roads because there's potholes in all the roads. So let's say I do that. Yes, we'll do that, everybody. But understand, we don't have the money to actually do it because if we had the money, it would already been done. So in order for us to get this money, we're going to introduce a 1 cent tax on everything that you buy at the grocery store. So as long as you're okay with that 1 cent tax, then we'll fix the pothole. Y'all okay with that tax? Because that's going to generate the money that we need to pay that off. That's what I would say. And as soon as I start talking like that, my advisors are going to say, Dre, you can't do that. You're not going to win the election, because I'm going to start pissing people off because they don't want a trade-off. The average person does not understand the concept that every single thing that you do in life comes at a cost. And as soon as I start pointing it out, because it's just my nature, this is just the way that I communicate, my political career will be over. Let alone could I get to the federal level. I couldn't even get to the state level, let alone the federal level, the way that I communicate. I like to fundamentally change the way that I think, because the way that I speak is a reflection of the way that I think. You can't do this in politics. It takes a certain makeup to get to the federal level in politics, because telling the truth will get you defeated in an election. Secondly, if you tell the truth in all your elections, secondly, who's going to fund your campaign? Where are you going to get the money from? Now, if you happen to be Donald Trump and you are independently wealthy and you have enough money, understand that Donald Trump's campaigns are not funded just it's not like he's just making withdrawals out of his own bank account. He still uses other people's money. Why does he use other people's money? Reason he uses other people's money, or any of you know anything about business, you know OPM is one of the main things. Other people's money, other people's minds, other people's brains, other people's information, other people's resources. You always want to use other people's stuff instead of using your own, because there's more stuff if you use everybody else's than if you just use your own, because you're only limited to yourself. Donald Trump understands this very well. All right, maybe one of the reasons why he had so many bankruptcies, because he used other people's money, messed up, and then he had to get it back. The whole thing is, the reason he takes other people's money is because they are buying favor with him. So if you watched the speech last night, I watched all the way through when he walked out of the venue. When he's walking out of the venue, there's like this aisle he walks down. Every president does this. And while you're walking down that aisle, everybody wants to shake your hand and say, hey, great speech. Or they want to drop a line in your ear or say, hey, we didn't meet, but I'm friends with this guy and that guy. And then you're glad handing everybody. Everybody wants something from you when you have that level of power. Everybody wants something from you. And if you're in politics, you have no choice but to play that game, because that's the most powerful person in the game that you're playing in. It's like you're playing in the NBA. You want to be cool with the commissioner, because they're in charge. They can screw your whole career over if they want to, and they can boost your career if they want to. So you got to be cool with that person. So you got to play the game. And there's another reason why I'm not in politics, is I don't like playing these kind of games. I don't like playing political games or pretending to be cool with or want to be cool with somebody who I don't actually like. That's one of the reasons why I'm an entrepreneur. So I don't want to talk to somebody I don't have to. If I don't want to talk to you, I'm not talking to you. I don't care if you want to talk to me. Your desire to talk to me is not an obligation on my calendar. Now, when you work in politics, you don't have that freedom. Work in politics, you can't do that. If somebody wants to come talk to you, you got to talk to them. Let's say I'm sitting in the office. Let's say I win some political office. Where y'all think I would succeed in politics? What office could I have federally? Could I be president, senator, House of Representatives? Is there any other position I could have? Could I be on the Supreme Court? I won't be on the Supreme Court. Let's say I was a senator or a congressperson. All right. So I got an office in DC, and my assistant comes in and says, Mr. Baldwin, or whatever she calls me, you have someone from Nabisco, the food company. They're coming here to meet with you. And I'm like, I don't want to talk to nobody from Nabisco. Let's say I'm thinking that. I don't want to talk to this guy from Nabisco. I'm like, well, what does he want and why is he here? And my assistant's going to tell me, Mr. Baldwin, of the $500,000 that you raised for your last campaign that was successful, is the reason why you're here. All right, $350,000 of those dollars came from Nabisco. So guess what? I got to take the meeting with Nabisco. So I had to sit there and talk to these people because they're the only reason I have an office. And if I don't talk to them, they're going to say, okay, we're going to take that same money, that same $350K that we gave to Dre in the last election. You know what they're going to do with that money? They're going to give it to my opponent in the next election to make sure that I lose. And that opponent, after they beat me and they take my office from me, when Nabisco comes knocking on the door, guess what? They're going to have the meeting. See, this is what you got to do when you're in politics. This is the lobbying. This is the politicking. This is shaking hands with people who you ain't really feeling, and pretending to like people who you don't actually like. You got to do all of this when you're in politics. And I know you see people on the political left, they tend to do a little bit more of this. You get the AOCs and the Bernies and the Nancy Pelosi's and the Elizabeth Warrens and the what's the other woman, Jasmine Crockett's. They get on social media and pretend as if they keep it real. You get a lot of this from the younger people. So the AOCs and the Jasmine Crockett's, let's use them as an example. They cosplay that they're keeping it real, but understand something. When the cameras ain't on, they're shaking hands with people they don't like too. They don't have a choice because that's the only way they can win an election. It's the only way they can stay in office. The only way they can have any kind of say in the Democratic Party. You want to have some say in the party, you got to be cool with the people who have the power. Because if you can't get cool with the people who have the power, you ain't moving up. Now, how is that? Why is that a thing? It's because people can be in there for 40 years. Imagine I came into the government. Let's say I was on the Republican side, right? I just told you about Bob Dole. Bob Dole was a senator from 1969 to 1996. So let's say I won an election in like 1994, right? And I became a senator from Pennsylvania. That's where I'm from. In 1994, I was in Pennsylvania. That's my hometown is actually Philadelphia, PA. I now live in Miami, Florida, South Florida. But let's say I won Senate in 1994. I go in there and I killed it in my election. I was just doing my thing and everybody loves me and Dre's very popular. I'm on the cover of magazines, all that. And this is before the social media. I show up as the hotshot new senator in Congress. But mind you, it's 500 plus people in Congress. I go in there and I start trying to shot call and make decisions and do stuff. Bob Dole's going to pull me aside and say, check this out, kid. Congratulations on your win. But he's not going to say this in so many words, but he's going to let me know indirectly that he's the one who calls the shots here. And if I don't get in line and fall in line behind him being in charge, they will see to it that my stay in Congress is a very short one. Now, how would he have the power to do that? He has the power to do that because he's been there for 30 damn years. I just got there 2 days ago. I can't go against this guy and win. He's friends with everybody in Congress. I'm friends with nobody. Nobody knows me. I just got there. I won an election, but all the people who elected me are back in Philadelphia. I'm here in DC. There's a whole different world. All right, who you are over there has nothing to do with who you are over here. And this is one of the reasons why these people can be entrenched for so long and why some people who could possibly have some ideas and concepts that could help us, whether you're on a Democrat or Republican side, and it actually doesn't even matter what sides you're on because that person is representing your state or your district or your area, whether you voted for them or not. So they could be helping us if they could get their point across and get their message across amongst the 500 plus people in Congress. But if you aren't cool with the people with all the power in Congress, your voice doesn't matter. The stuff that you say, you can't even get it out there. I guarantee you there are people in Congress right now who have some actual fresh new ideas that a lot of people would be excited about and would help move things forward on both sides of the aisle politically. I'm not even talking about the Democrats or Republicans, just people in Congress right now. They can't get their ideas out there. They can't even get the ideas on the floor. Thank you for that gift, AJ Ward. Never saw that one before. They can't even get their ideas on the floor because they don't have enough say in Congress to where anybody's going to listen to what they have to say. I mean, they might be able to get on the mic and say, hey, I want my time to speak and you get 2 minutes. You're allowed that. But is anybody actually going to follow you? No, because you have no power. Now, why don't you have power? Well, we understand that life is political and you do have to do things to navigate and earn your right to say what you want to say, influence to where people listen to you. But at the same time, if everybody was coming in fresh every 6 years or every 8 years, or whatever the number is, let's say there were term limits. If everybody was coming in fresh every 8 years and nobody could get so deeply entrenched that they can basically stop anybody else from having influence. That's the point. That's the reason why term limits need to matter. That's the reason why DC should not be the hub of politics. The hub of politics should not be anywhere. Actually, let me back up. Let me restate that. DC should be the hub of politics, but only for the administrative branch and the legislators. They should all be back home with boots on the ground where they're supposed to be working and serving the people they're supposed to be serving. They should be outside shaking people's hands and kissing babies in the mall. That's what they should be at the farmers market on the weekends where people can actually look at them and say, hey, you voted for that bill this last week. Why'd you vote for that bill? I'm not a fan of that bill. And you should have to be living your life where you are allegedly working and deal with the people that you're allegedly representing. That's the way it should be. And some people may say, well, then that means AOC might get approached when she's at the Whole Foods. So what? We're voting for you. We put you in office. We're paying your salary. So what? You get approached. You're representing us. You wanted this job. The trade-off of being a representative is you have to represent. And if we don't like the way you're representing, you're going to hear about it. Not just on a phone call, not just an email. You can get approached, not in a negative, like confrontational way, but you want to represent us in the government. If you're doing things that we don't feel, then in your everyday life, you should get approached. What's wrong with that? Again, not in the way that anybody is physically threatened or in danger or anything like that. But when we have DC as the hub of politics, a lot of our representatives, quote unquote representatives, they can hide in DC and never show face where they're supposedly to the people they're supposedly serving. And that's a problem. And every congressperson very much understands this because they're all living in that bubble or operating in that bubble for a heavy amount of time. Even I was reading Barack Obama's, I don't know if it was his first book. I think it was the second one, The Audacity of Hope. I believe it was the second book. And Barack Obama talked about this when he was a senator and he was in Chicago, right, representing Illinois. He got himself a little apartment in DC and he would live in the apartment by himself like 3 or 4 days a week. And then he would fly back to Illinois for another 3 or 4 days a week where Michelle and his kids were. And that's how you had to do it when he was a senator. 3 or 4 days, I would say that needs to be cut down. The same way that when you're on a board of directors at a company, they meet like once a quarter. That's the way it should be. Meet like once a quarter, make the decision you need to make, and everybody else goes back home. So it's kind of like going to a conference. You go to a conference once a quarter for 3 or 4 days, maybe even a week. Do what you got to do at the conference, then you go back home and you do your job and you live your life. And you should be getting a stipend for your contribution, not a full-time salary. So that means you got to actually go do something and serve society in a way that is bigger than just being a member of politics. So if you're a lawyer, you got to go practice law. If you're a doctor, I guess you could be a doctor. You run your own business, run your business. You got a job, I guess you go do your job. But you shouldn't be making enough money just hanging in DC to where that's all you do. Because again, we don't know what these people are doing, which leads to the next point, transparency. We need more transparency in the government. Even if you are not a fan of Elon Musk, even if you're not a fan of DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, they also could have called it DOGT, Department of Government Transparency, because that's what Elon is trying to bring to the table, more transparency about what's happening in the government. Did y'all hear yesterday in the presentation Trump gave, that part where he was just running down the list of the money that they allegedly found, that people were pushing back? I heard some people on the Democratic side chirping while he was reading off the list of where Elon and his team allegedly found money going to places that were just kind of ridiculous for things that were ridiculous. And a lot of it was going to outside the United States of America. The point is, we know that there's money going to other places outside of this country, money that comes from our pockets and from our paychecks before we get a chance to do anything with it. And they're sending it to other places in ways that we don't really have a say in how these things happen. And again, when we don't have the transparency, we don't even know these things are occurring. Those things that Donald Trump listed off yesterday when he was listing the amount of money going to different things, different places. I never heard of those things before in my life, but I pay taxes. So shouldn't I know about that? That kind of stuff should be made public record. And technically, depending on how it happened, it could be public record if it's a bill or a law that was passed through Congress. All of those things are documented. They're on the White House's website. They have to document every single bill or law that gets passed, even the ones that get proposed. However, inside of certain agencies, they may not have that mandate to be that transparent, and you can easily, excuse me, depending on how much legalese you put into a document, you can easily hide things, as also known as the fine print. And people in government know exactly how this works. Elon Musk knows how it works, and he is looking to make it more transparent. And this is why people are against Elon Musk. People are not against Elon Musk because he's a billionaire. Of course, they're against him because he's standing next to Trump. But what they're really against is the fact that he is about to start exposing people, entities, and friends of people of those entities, and the policies or the things that they're doing, the actions that they're taking. And people don't want to get exposed because I just explained to you. Let's say I work in DC and I got some friends of friends who they're giving money to these people who are giving money to those people whose money's going to my campaign and keeping me in business. And now Elon is starting to look at the friend of a friend of a friend. And if he gets too deep into that one, then it's going to lead to them. Then it's going to lead to them. And then it's going to lead to me. And I can connect the dots before he even starts. I say, no, don't look in that direction. Don't look over there. All right, I don't even want you to look over there. So y'all remember on The Sopranos? Y'all saw The Sopranos? You remember when that guy Feach Lamana came home from incarceration, and he was kind of a little bit too hard against Tony. He wanted to be the man because he was older than Tony. He remember when Tony was a kid, Tony Soprano, and he was going a little bit. He seemed like he was not okay with the fact that Tony was the man and he wasn't the man. And they decided, Tony told, who was his nephew? I forgot what his nephew's name was. Tony told his nephew, he told his guy, Silvio, we got to get rid of Feach. Now, Silvio didn't want to end that guy's life. So what they did was they went and got the nephew. What was Tony's nephew's name in The Sopranos? So he went and got his nephew to go to Feach and say, hey, I got some TVs that we pilfered. We can hide them and Feach said, you can hide them in my garage, because he knew he could get a cut off those TVs getting sold. So he wanted the money. And they put the TVs in the garage, and he said, my parole officer never checks the garage. And then the next time the parole officer came, he said, let me see your garage. Now, why did the parole officer ask to see the garage? Because they went and told on him. They dropped a hint on a parole officer. Hey, this guy has some stolen TVs. They checked the stolen TVs, and boom, it was done. Christopher was the nephew who went and set him up. The whole point is, Feach didn't want them looking in the garage. And me, if I'm working in politics, I don't want Elon Musk looking in my garage, because I know if he starts looking, he's going to find things that I don't want him to find. And that's the whole point. And Elon's not a dumb guy. I heard AOC trying to say he's a moron who happens to be a billionaire. Doesn't quite sound right. But anyway, she knows he's not a moron. And that's the reason why they're trying to use these ad hominem attacks on him, because they have nothing else. Once he starts looking, he's going to find things. And they don't want him to find things, because eventually the chain is going to lead to other people. It's not that it's going straight to them. There's a chain that goes through all of this. And again, this is DC politics. Next, we want to simplify tax code. Again, does everybody agree with this? Do you want to simplify tax code? Yes or no? If you want the tax code to stay what it is, the current tax code in the United States is probably over 1,000 pages long. Let me see if ChatGPT can answer this. How long is the current tax code in actual pages of the United States of America? So I'm asking ChatGPT to see if they can answer it. And they say the current U.S. tax code is notoriously complex, but its exact length depends on how it's measured. So they can't even answer the question. So the Internal Revenue Code, IRC, the actual laws passed by Congress when it comes to taxes is, and you want to guess how many pages it is? So it's two numbers I'm going to ask for. First, I'm going to ask for the Internal Revenue Code. How many pages do you want to guess? Give me a guess. Give me a number of pages y'all want to guess. The Internal Revenue Code in the United States of America. These are all the laws passed by Congress when it comes to revenue. How many pages is this? Give me a number of pages. All right, some of you are guessing way too high. These numbers, some of you guessing a little bit too high. Somebody came very close. Panda came very close. Susie is very close. The rest of you are very ambitious. The number is 2,600 pages. The Internal Revenue Code, all the laws passed by Congress, is 2,600 pages. Now, they say, ChatGPT goes on to say, however, when you include the IRS regulations, revenue rulings, and case law that interpret and enforce the tax code, how many pages is that? So this is the second number I'm asking. So you take all the actual laws, then the regulations, the rulings, and the case law. How many pages is the tax code in the United States of America? Give me there's another number. So the number right now, according to ChatGPT. So who knows? This might be a couple of years behind or wherever they came up with this number, but I think this is pretty close. All right. So now I think all of you are a little bit shy to guess too high because of the first number. Well, the second number is a lot higher. So I think all you moderated your guesses here after the first one. Many of you overshot the first one. None of you has come close. This number, nobody's come close yet. Mara said 40,000. I see 10,000. Gina said 12,000. I see 15,000, 7,500, 10,000. Okay, so all of you got very modest on the second one. The actual number is 70,000. 70,000. 70,000. So Romel Curtis, I don't know if you put that after I said it, but we'll give you credit. Romel came the closest. He said 75,000. Number 70,000. The IRS code, tax code, all the stuff that your accountant goes through and however you do your taxes, $70,000. Pages, excuse me, not dollars. This includes not just the law, but also the explanations, the guidance, and the precedents that tax professionals use. So any of you as a tax professional, next time you talk to them, ask them, have you actually read the 70,000 page tax code? You might not want to know the answer. But anyway, we want a simplified tax code so that everybody knows exactly what the codes are, exactly what the laws are, what we can do, what we can't do. And the reason why you often hear people talking about billionaires getting tax cuts and big businesses getting tax cuts. The reason billionaires and big businesses get, quote unquote, get tax cuts is twofold. One, they do actually get cuts from the government simply because they provide jobs, and jobs mean employees, and employees mean you get taxed before you get a chance to touch your money. So the government loves when people are employed, and most people who are employed love being employed. That's one reason why people who build businesses and own businesses and the businesses themselves get tax cuts. Another reason why they get tax cuts is because there are loopholes in the tax code that can be driven through if you know what the loopholes are. But in order to know what the loopholes are, you need a really good accountant, and really good accountants cost a lot of money. And the loopholes only apply to you if you have earned a certain amount of money in a certain type of way. So if you don't earn money the way Elon Musk earns money, you are not eligible to use the tax loopholes or breaks that he is eligible to use. This is just the way the tax code works. So the tax code is designed to provide opportunities for breaks and loopholes to people based on how, when, where, and how much money you have generated. So any of you want access to more tax loopholes, here's a simple way to do it. Go earn more money in more ways. And the two most important ways, I've talked about this many times, I'll keep talking about it. If you're not familiar with Robert Kiyosaki, he wrote a book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. If you haven't read it, you should read it. And inside that book, he talks about this thing called the cash flow quadrant. I think he mentioned it in the book. And then he has whole books just talking about that. Cash flow quadrant, you have employees and small business owners on the left side, and you have business owners or entrepreneurs and investors on the right side, or you can just call them business owners. Difference between a small business owner and a business owner / entrepreneur is that the entrepreneur actually employs other people besides themselves, or even employs themselves, whereas a small business owner is like a sole proprietor. There is a business. You don't have a boss, but you still have to do all the work because you're pretty much running the business. And the people on the right side of the cash flow quadrant, i.e. the business owners, I always call them entrepreneurs, the business owners and entrepreneurs and investors, they get taxed differently simply because of the way that they earn their money. It's not about how much money, it's about the way you earn your money. You can earn more money as an employee or a small business owner, yet still get taxed higher than an investor or a business owner simply because of the way that you earned your money. I saw someone yesterday had posted on social media. I don't know if this number was accurate or not, but this person won the lottery, and they won like $1 billion with $1 billion. But then after taxes, they ended up with $474 million. And then someone left they made a sarcastic quote of it. And they said, how you become a billionaire, but you still get taxed more than Elon Musk. Well, first of all, winning the lottery does not make you a billionaire, because you don't even have $1 billion. That's number one, because you got to pay the taxes first. And secondly, tax dollars get taxed like regular income. It gets taxed like if you had a job. That's how they lottery winnings get taxed as if you just made that money at a job. Elon Musk does not make his money from a job. Neither does Jeff Bezos, neither does Donald Trump or whatever other quote unquote billionaire that you want to name. That's the reason why they get taxed differently. Income gets taxed a certain way. If Elon Musk was to get money as income, he would get taxed similar to how any of you who has a job gets taxed. But he doesn't make most of his money that way. He makes his money from dividends, makes his money from other business deals. Is not taxed the same way because he's not making it the same way. He's not a W-2 employee. Any of you would like to pay less in taxes, do something other than be a W-2 employee, because they get taxed first and they get taxed the most when it comes to the deductions and things that get taken out. And you don't get that much of it back. Even though you get a refund every year, you ain't getting most of the money back. Right? Most of y'all should know that, right? And at the same time, all that said, the majority of the money that the government collects from taxes do come from billionaires and big businesses. So most of the money does come from them, even though on a percentage basis, they're not having to give as much. But a smaller percentage of $1 billion is more like 1% of $1 billion is more than 10% of $50,000. So anyway, simplified tax code, we all agree on that. Next, border enforcement. This is an interesting one. You agree with this one? Yes or no? Border enforcement. Donald Trump said this in his address last night. He said, we have strengthened the border and we're protecting the border, enforcing the laws, etc. And then he said, for many years, people were saying, well, in order for us to defend the border, we need new laws and it got to go through Congress in order to do it. And then Donald Trump said, no, it turns out all we needed was a new president. And the Republicans loved that one. The Democrats really didn't like that comment. But what do you think about this border enforcement and defending the border? So I'm seeing a bunch of you saying yes. So Richard over there on TikTok said, how did they start generational wealth? That is absolutely not true, Richard. Most people who are millionaires in the United States, not billionaires, but millionaires. Most people who are millionaires are first generation millionaires, self-made, as they said. They did not inherit the money from their parents or a business. They started from being a regular person and then they went and made it over the course of their lifetimes. That's a statistical fact in the United States of America. Most millionaires, the majority of millionaires made it on their own. But anyway, I'll get to the comments when I'm done. So if all of you are agreeing that securing the border is a good thing, that means one of two things. Either A, we got a whole bunch of Trump supporting, MAGA flag waving Republicans in this live stream, or B, the Democrats have people on their side who support them who still want to see the border enforced. So why did none of the Democrats clap when Donald Trump said we are securing the border? So which one is it? Do I just got a whole bunch of MAGA in here? Or are there some Democrats in here? If you're a Democrat, put the word Democrat in the comment. We got any Democrats in the stream right now? I mean, active Democrats. You are a Democrat. When I say active, I mean you vote Democrat in the elections. You vote for Democrats. You got any Democrats in here? And so the only other way that all of you are saying yes to this is that, again, I just got a whole bunch of MAGA in here. Okay, so we got some Democrats in here. We got a few people saying that they're Democrat. So we got Amber, we got Arnie, we got user 965, we got Chuck. Shout out to the Democrats in here listening to this. Again, these are nonpartisan points that I'm making here. I think most American citizens want the border to be secure. That doesn't mean that we don't allow immigrants. They can be immigrants, and because some of you are listening to this are immigrants. Some of you have immigrants in your family. Some of you have immigrants in your company. Some of you are very close friends with people who have been immigrants. Some of you are second generation immigrants. Your parents came over here or their parents came over here, and you're third generation, and you are maybe the first or second generation of your own family to be born on U.S. soil. I'm not against immigration. Immigrants are great. It's great to have immigrants here. The only issue in America is that we just need to make them do it the right way, the same way every other country does. I was listening to, who was I listening to yesterday? I can't remember who was saying this. I can't remember who posted it. I wasn't watching the actual show, but somebody posted a clip. Might have been on social media. And this is a guy from a country in Europe. I gotta be careful what countries' names I say over in Europe, but I think I can get. No, I'm not even going to test it. I'm not even going to risk it. Country that starts with the letter P. I'll spell it Poland. It was a guy from that country. And again, just on TikTok, I got to be careful what names I say. So this guy from Poland, he was a representative of the government. And what he was saying, and it was on some TV show, he was speaking English. He said that we keep our borders very secure and we are not allowing people in this country. I'm paraphrasing what he said, but we don't allow people to just come into this country. We don't have immigration like that. You cannot come into this country if you're not a citizen of this country. And that's it. And the woman who was on the TV show was pushing back on him and saying, well, that means you don't have a whole lot of immigrants. You don't have a whole lot of diversity of people coming into your country. And he said, exactly. That's the point. We don't want diversity. We don't want a whole bunch of immigrants coming into our country. We keep our borders secure. We do not allow people to come in here. And if you're not a citizen and you're not already here, you ain't getting in. There's nothing wrong with this mindset. There's nothing wrong with this. I'm not saying America needs to do it. What I'm saying is every other country does it. Any of you who's an American citizen, please try to go become a citizen in another country. And you don't know anybody. You don't know anybody who's not already there. You think you could just go into another country and just become a citizen? Answer is no, you cannot. I gave you all this information a couple weeks ago that there are other countries out there that allow a fast track to citizenship. And you know what the fast track to citizenship is? If you know what it is, because in all the countries I got as examples, The answer was the same thing every single time. It was you had to put at least 6 figures of your own money on the table and donate it to that country, either to their tax fund or their real estate fund. That's the only way you could possibly become a citizen within 2 months in any of these other countries of the world. You got to put money on the table. And this is what Donald Trump is talking about. He mentioned it. I heard him mention it maybe 2 weeks ago. He mentioned it again last night, the gold card. So you got the green card, now the gold card. The gold card is where someone from another country, let's say I'm from Brazil. I know I can say Brazil, so I've said it safely before. So let's say I'm from Brazil. I have no connections to America, but I want to move here. I want to become a citizen to America. You know what the gold card is? The gold card is you pay America $5 million, and they use that money for whatever they're going to use it for. You pay $5 million, and now you can get fast-tracked into citizenship. And why is Donald Trump promoting this? He's promoting this because, number one, this is what other countries do to Americans. Again, any of you Americans who ever try to become a citizen in another country, please let everybody know in the comments what happens. You try to become a citizen in another country and you don't know anybody. Like, it's not like your husband or wife is already a citizen. Maybe then you can get a little bit faster. Excuse me, it's a little bit smoother path. If you're cool with some politician who has some pull, maybe it's a little bit smoother. But if you're just nobody and you just walk up to the doors of another country, say, I want to become a citizen, they're like, who the hell are you? Number one. Number two, what are you bringing to the table? And if you don't answer both of those questions the right way, then number three is no, thank you. Goodbye. You have a visa. You can stay here for 60 days or 180 days. But after that, you got to go back to where you come from. And you got to show us that you have a flight booked to get out of here. And if you don't have a flight booked to get out of here, you can't come in. That's the laws. That's the way other countries operate. But we just let everybody in. But Donald Trump says, are we going to start charging people to come in? And I guarantee you, because some people might think it's a ridiculous premise that he's just talking shit when he says that. I believe people are actually going to buy that gold card. I think this is actually going to generate revenue for the United States government. Now, what they do with the money is a whole other story. But is it going to happen? I believe so. I believe there are people in other countries who want to get involved in the United States. They want to come over here and maybe bring their families with them, and they have money. And they will pay that money, get the gold card, become a citizen. And here's the good thing about those people coming in is that they're bringing something to the table. Because again, and I'm not knocking anyone, I'm sure there are people here who are immigrants, or you're a second or third generation immigrants, and you or whoever was the immigrants and your family, friends, etc., came here with nothing, but now you have something, and now you are contributing to society. But we can also agree that there are immigrants who come here to this country with nothing. They still have nothing, and they are not contributing to society. They are only taking away. And we need to draw a clear line of delineation between the people who are contributing and the people who are not, even if you showed up with absolutely nothing, but you built yourself up, because this is a land of opportunity. But with these people with the gold card, they're going to be coming in contributing from the door. And I have no problem letting these people in. If there's 100 people who want to put $5 million on the table and join the United States of America, let them in. Let them become citizens ASAP. Why? Because we know they're bringing something to the table. Other countries, they make you bring something to the table. You go to another country, try to become a citizen from the United States. They want to know who you are. You got to do all the paperwork. What's your background? Why do you want to come here? And what are you going to do to help us? And if you can't answer, again, the answer is no. You can't come here, period. There's no appealing to people's emotions on a political stage like Joe Biden and Kamala and Barack Obama. They're not doing any of that. It's bring something to the table, or the answer is no, go away. So we just need to enforce the border. And what Donald Trump was communicating, and this is something I've been telling people over and over again, Donald Trump in 2016 and this year as president again, 2017, and now as president, he did not create any new laws when it comes to border enforcement or immigration. He didn't create anything new. All he did was take the laws we already have and make sure they're actually being enforced and followed. That's all he did. He did not create any new laws. Joe Biden didn't create any new laws. He didn't destroy any laws. He just didn't enforce them. The reason why we had so much immigration during the Biden-Harris administration, because they just said, we're not going to enforce these laws. He signed executive orders that relaxed the enforcement at the border. That's an absolute fact. When Donald Trump came in, well, first of all, the first time Trump came in, he signed executive orders that strengthened the enforcement. Biden came in, he signed executive orders that deleted Trump's executive orders and relaxed it. And then when Trump came back in, all he did was sign executive orders that did it again. So it just went from, it was here, let's say wherever it was under Obama, Trump made it stronger, then Biden made it weaker, then Trump just made it stronger again. So it's just like this back and forth that they're doing. And if a Democrat comes in 2028, guess what they're going to do? They're going to sign executive orders that do the same thing all over again. Thank you, everybody who was watching on TikTok. Can we get up to 30,000 likes on here? We're at 25,000. I think yesterday we did 65. Can we get to Let's see if we can get to 100. Can we get to 100,000 likes here today on TikTok? And shout out to everybody who's watching on other platforms as well. By the way, if you're watching me on TikTok, make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel. The link is in my profile. And follow me on Instagram. That link is in my profile as well, because shenanigans happen on TikTok. It just happened yesterday, and it might happen again today. So let's continue. Next one. Stricter punishments for violent offenders. Trump alluded to this. Actually, he did more than allude to it. He talked about this several times last night when he mentioned Miss Lincoln Riley. He mentioned, there was a couple other names he mentioned whose names I don't remember. There was a woman there who was, I believe her husband was a law enforcement officer. Was that woman? Y'all remember that woman? I believe her name was January, because when he started talking about it, he said January. I said, what happened in January? But her name is actually January. It was a white woman. She had on a light blue dress. Was her husband a law enforcement officer? You know who I'm talking about? I remember him calling her out when she stood up and she was by herself. I believe her husband was a law enforcement officer, and he was the one who, I believe Tony, Trisha, okay, a bunch of you remember who I'm talking about. But he was a law enforcement officer. And one of the things that Trump said is that they want to enforce the D penalty, death penalty, for anyone who commits violent actions against a law enforcement officer or takes the life of a law enforcement officer. And I think that is case by case basis, depending on how it happens. They get to go to court just like anybody else that's charged with a crime. But I like the idea. I like the idea of it. Because, and also stricter punishments for violent offenders, especially who they are, what they did, and why they did it. I'm not with the H crime thing, HATE crimes. I'm not a fan of that. But when it comes to law enforcement officers and people who are here and are not full citizens and they do violent crime, yes, they got to either get shipped out, or I am in favor of the direction of what Trump is pointing to. Now, if that is ever going to get passed through Congress, I doubt it. Is he ever going to get a law made that way, what he said? I highly doubt he's going to get that through Congress, because he has too much opposition. I don't think it's going to happen, because you got to get some Democrats to go with it. Name a Democrat that's going to vote for that. I don't think any of you can name one that will vote for that. If he tries to even drum up Congress to even try to make that into a bill that ends up on his desk, he will never get a chance to sign it, because the Democrats are not going to go for it. But this is what Trump does. He puts the idea out there so everybody knows where he stands. That's really what he's doing. Is this ever going to become a law? Answer is probably not. All right. Funding the police departments. We kind of just touched on that. Pharmaceuticals. Any of you on a pharmaceutical right now? Anybody listening to this on a prescription pharmaceutical? And I mean, like, on a consistent basis, like you have to keep paying for it and there's no end in sight. We got anybody here who's on a prescription pharmaceutical? And if so, what are you on and how much do you got to pay? Anybody on a prescription pharmaceutical, what are you on and how much does it cost? Like, how often? So it's X number of dollars per month, per year, etc. I'm not on any pharmaceuticals, and nobody in my family is, and hopefully it stays that way. And one of the things that Kamala, this was one of what appeared to be a strong point. Matthew says $700. $700 for what? What are you paying $700 for, Matthew? Those of you who are on something, tell me what you're on and how much you pay, and give me a time frame. $700 per what? Month, week, day? So Matthew said $700 every 3 months. Bad VW chick said $165 a month. Bubble Wrap said I pay $45 for metformin. I don't even know what that is. Yeah, there's a bunch of these pharmaceuticals I've never even heard of. And $700 every 3 months. What are you paying for, Matthew? And Stacy said she doesn't trust Big Pharma. I understand. Can't Wait says 2 prescriptions, $4 a month. So you got a good deal, whatever that is. Husband, diabetes meds. Misty said $1,100. $1,100? Are you paying that out of pocket? Are you paying with insurance? $1,100 for diabetes? Is that how much it costs? That's crazy. Diabetes has been around forever. $1,100 a month for diabetes. I find that number, that's a super high number. I don't think you're lying, but that's crazy. Lala said $400 a month for an inhaler. Is that how much they cost? I remember when I was in college, one of my roommates one year, he had asthma. That's for asthma, right? And he had an inhaler. Is that how much it costs? $400 for that little piece of plastic? $400. Jinx said Ozempic, $420 deductible, then $47 a month. That's crazy. Sunday Girl said that's a blood sugar med, is excellent. Wow. I didn't know these things. So Erica said $350 for HRT, $90 every 3 months because insurance doesn't cover either one. That's crazy. Type 2 diabetes. So Kyle said it is reversible. Okay. Yeah, that's crazy. So Bev said plants and herbs from God. Yeah, some people on that one. Melissa said Linzess. Another, I never heard of any of these. $500 a month for IBS. $500 a month. These are like serious bills that people are paying for this stuff. Erica said 90 for thyroid, and it isn't covered every 3 months. 150 a month. Tony said for TRT, well worth it. Ozempic, fighting insurance to pay. I've heard that that's a headache dealing with the insurance companies back and forth. Man, that's crazy. Inhaler should be $20. Yeah, I remember one of my roommates had an inhaler. It's a little plastic thing. Why does it cost $400? Natalie said EpiPen 2 costs $700. Stacy, my father's diabetic med is $400 a month. So why do all you have these wildly different numbers? And some of you are mentioning the same thing, but your numbers are completely different. How does that even happen? My insurance does not cover medication. Why do I pay insurance? That's a good question. I would ask you the same question. Bubble Wrap, why are you paying it? Patriot said you pay more out of pocket if you're insured than if you're not. Yeah, or so I've heard. I've heard that. Donna Spearman said, am I on Trump team? No, I'm not on anybody's team. I'm on the team of the people. That was why I did a whole live about a week before the election, who to vote for. You should watch it. That replay is on YouTube. And shout out to YouTube. Looks like it's working steadily here today, finally. So pharmaceutical prices. Kamala Harris made this a pretty solid part of her campaign. If I was to give her credit for one thing that she pushed pretty hard in opposition to Trump, he mentioned it, but he didn't mention it as hard as she did. One thing I would say Kamala did pretty solidly that sounded good. Now, whether she could actually do it or not, I don't know. But she said she wanted to lower the cost of pharmaceuticals. And I remember when she said that, and she said it many times. She was pushing this pretty hard. And I remember thinking when I heard it, because I'm not on any pharmaceuticals, I'm not on any prescriptions, and no one in my immediate family, like the family I come from or the family that I have, is on any prescriptions. And I remember thinking to myself, is that really that big of a deal? Or that many people on medication that even matters that she needs to bring this up? And it turns out the answer is yes. There's a lot of people on medications and pharmaceuticals, and many people on things that they will never get off of. And again, what I tell you earlier about a capitalistic society. When a society is capitalistic, then the drive for everyone eventually becomes a drive for the dollar. Why? Because even if your main drive in life personally is not the dollar, the only way you'll be able to compete in the marketplaces that you're in is you have to get and have dollars, because otherwise you can't operate. You can't do things. You can't make anything happen. If you don't have money, you can't win in politics because you can't win a campaign. Your opponent will just outspend you and beat you. Y'all saw when they had the whole thing with a couple black Democrats who were pushing far to the left. It was Bowman in New York and Bush in, where was she in? Missouri. They both got voted out. And the reason they claim they got voted out is because a group came out there, AIPAC. I got to be careful if I say them or not. They spent a whole bunch of money campaigning against them. And that's why they lost. Is that why they lost? Probably. Yeah, because somebody campaigned against them. Doesn't mean that those people are wrong. But this is the whole game in a capitalistic society, is everything is about money. I'm saying all that to say this, that pharmaceutical companies understand this. They are in business and they're not wrong for doing this. But when they understand that there is, because the first law of economics, everybody, is supply and demand. When there's a high demand for something, the supply will meet the demand. And when there's a high demand for a thing, you can control the demand by controlling the price. So if there's a high demand for a product, but we don't have a whole lot of supply, what we can do is create more of it, of course, and meet the demand. Or what we can do is raise the price of the product, and then fewer people will want it because not everybody can afford it. And now we can meet, the supply and demand curves can meet in the right place. Now, again, I'm painting that with an extremely broad brush. You want to learn more about the supply and demand curve and economics, go on YouTube, and you can probably find 30 hours of videos explaining that in more detail. The point being that so many people end up on medication in the United States of America that the pharmaceutical companies are able to make a lot of money by servicing these people. And the medical industry itself, and a lot of people get mad when I talk about the medical industry, but we had to touch on it, is that the medical industry itself. Any of you, we got anybody here went to medical school? If you went to med school, put that in the comment. Anybody here went to medical school, or you are in a relationship, your husband or your wife went to medical school, or your kid went to medical school, or your mom or your dad, somebody from an immediate family, your current family or the family you come from, anybody went to medical school. So medical schools are funded by pharmaceutical companies. That's, again, this is not conjecture. This is not my opinion. This is known. Medical schools are funded by pharmaceutical companies. I'm not saying 100%, because of course there's tuition and all of that, but a lot of the money that goes into medical schools comes from pharmaceutical organizations. Now, again, I talked about this when it came to politics. This creates a possible conflict of interest, but it's a little bit more complicated than the governmental one. Governmental one is easy to point out. It's obvious. The pharmaceutical company is a little bit different, and it becomes tricky because it can become an entire debate, which I'm not going to have here today. So if you're in the medical industry, don't get mad at me or don't flag my live. Just hear me out what I'm going to say. And moderators, watch out. All right. So if a farm, just think about that. I just want you all to draw this line yourself logically and ask yourself if it makes any sense. If I'm a medical school student, let's say I go to the University of Miami Medical School, and the medical industry, pharmaceutical companies have funded my school. That means they have a say in what gets taught and how it gets taught. They have a say in what's in the textbooks that I'm learning from. And they have a say in maybe what internship I get and, what gets said and what doesn't get said. Let's just put it that way. They have a say. I'm not saying they're dictating the whole thing. They might, but they have a say. So now I go to medical school for how many years? How long is medical school? Last I heard, I think it was 8 years. Let's say I go to medical school for whatever number of years. I've been in school for all those years, and I have learned, I've been taught material that the pharmaceutical industry has approved of, right? Okay, so 8 years. Thank you, Carla. Now, as soon as I get out of school, I go get a job at a hospital, or I open my own practice, or I'm doing whatever it is that I'm doing in the medical industry. What am I going to tell my patients? I'm going to tell them what I know to be true. What do I know to be true? What I just spent 8 years in school learning. Now, where do I get the information from? Partially from the pharmaceutical companies. Now, what does that mean? Are the pharmaceutical companies in a capitalistic society incentivized to teach your doctor, your physician, your surgeon, that they should steer you to doing a thing that leads you into giving money to the pharmaceutical industry? I'm not saying this, that the pharmaceutical industry is trying on purpose to hurt people. What I am saying is that in a capitalistic society, if I run a business, let's say I run a pharmaceutical company, and my company makes money, the more people I have taking my product, am I not incentivized to teach doctors to steer people to take that product? I'm incentivized to do it. Doesn't mean I'm going to do it, but I'm incentivized to do it. And when the incentive exists, everybody needs to understand that human beings respond to incentives. If you give people incentives, they will respond to it. There was this story years ago. I don't know. I believe it was a real story. I believe it was in the country that starts with the letter. I got to be careful what I say over here. So India, that country, with a whole lot of people. So they were having a problem with snakes, reptiles. They were having a problem with snakes. So the government put out this thing that said, if you can bring us a dead snake, we'll give you an X amount of dollars. We'll give you $100. So let's just use that. We'll give you $100. You bring us a dead snake. So people started bringing dead snakes. The problem is people started bringing more snakes than the government even thought existed, because here's what happened. Because they were incentivizing people to get $100 for bringing in a dead snake. Here's what people started doing. They started breeding snakes, killing them, and then bringing them to the government to collect the money. So they made a business out of just breeding a snake just for the purpose of killing it, bringing it to the government so they could collect the money. The government realized the issue and they ended the program. This is the fundamental conflict of interest that exists when you put an incentive in front of somebody's face. This is the issue with the medical industry when it comes to the prices, et cetera. Kamala was talking about lowering pharmaceutical prices. I don't know how plausible that was to do. Maybe it's the reason why Trump wasn't talking about it. But if the government could do something, and this is what I guess this is going to be RFK's job, I guess it's going to be his job, is diving into this stuff. And it's the same thing that I said when it came to Elon and Doge. RFK is going to run into the same problem. And I believe RFK's pushback is going to be 10 times stronger than Elon's pushback. So when RFK starts doing his thing, if you think the pushback against Elon is strong, wait till you see the pushback against RFK. Why? For several reasons. First of all, RFK used to be on the left politically. He comes from a family that was on the left, number one. Number two, he is talking about medicine. It's one thing to talk about money. All right, people do get emotional about money, but a lot of people aren't very logical about money, period, on any level for any reason. So it's one thing with Elon. He's talking about money. People are going to get mad, but a lot of people really don't know what they're talking about with that stuff. When it comes to medicine, we're talking about people's lives. We're talking about well-being. We're talking about your kids. We're talking about your grandma. People get really emotional when it comes to medicine because we're talking about individuals' bodies. Again, if you thought Elon's pushback was strong, wait till RFK starts cooking. All right, there's going to be heavy pushback against that man. And he has a more checkered background than Elon has. Now, the only thing with Elon is he has this social media platform. RFK, I don't see him super active on social. So the pushback may not be as obvious in the media for you and I, but the pushback against him is going to be it's going to be bloodthirsty. Let's just put it that way. There are going to be people coming for his head. And when he starts doing what he's doing, because he's getting into the pharmaceutical industry for several reasons. Number one, he's questioned the jabs. Number two, he's questioning what's happening to kids. Number three, he has been a lawyer and he has gone after these pharmaceutical companies. And number four, pharmaceutical companies have a lot of money and they're not going to sit there and just let him attack them. This is the reason why it's going to get wild when he actually starts doing what he's going to do. So let's move off pharmaceuticals, because people tend to get really emotional on that subject. Not on mine, but that's not the topic overall here today. Next, increased competition in healthcare. This one is kind of connected. If there was more competition in healthcare, then of course the prices are going to go down, because competition makes prices go down. This is just the way it works. This is the reason why years ago when Bill Gates had IBM, he had IBM, right? Was it IBM? No. What's the company Bill Gates had? I forgot the name of his company. What's the name of Bill Gates' company? Microsoft. Yes, Microsoft. So when Bill Gates had Microsoft, they faced antitrust lawsuits because they had so much power. They had so much power that they could, technically, if they wanted to, they could just keep raising the price and no one could get what they were offering anywhere else. So the antitrust law said, well, you all got to break this up so that there's competition. When there's more competition, the prices go down. This is the way it works. So y'all know Uber, right? Uber came out and it was just Uber. Well, when Lyft came out, it made Uber have to compete with Lyft. So Lyft could just come in and just undercut every price Uber had, and they could just get all the rides. So Uber had to respond to that. And now you have competition, which makes it better for all of us, because neither one of them can just dominate the market. Now, maybe they can collude and say, hey, Uber could call Lyft and say, hey, let's just raise the price on everybody. And now another company is going to come in. So right now, the next company is called Waymo. Any of you drove in a Waymo? And there are other companies who have tried. Some of them failed. Any of you rode in a Waymo yet? If you don't know what a Waymo is a driverless car, but is Uber, but with no person. So that's a new thing. Has anybody in here have rode in a Waymo yet? You actually rode in one. I believe the only place it's located, I heard somebody say in LA, they have it. It's probably in Silicon Valley, like San Francisco, and Phoenix are the three places I saw. Because I have the app on my phone. I'm in Miami and I was in Vegas and I was trying to get one. I was wondering, do they have Waymo in Vegas? They didn't have it in Vegas yet. So the only place I saw it's called Waymo 1 is the place it's called. Yeah, so right now they have San Francisco, LA, and Phoenix. It's called Waymo 1. So y'all can get this app on your phone. So I got it on my phone, even though I haven't been to any of these places to try it. But if I am, I'll get it. But they're trying to get into other places. So, and they're saying you got to have an invite code. You know how they do when they first start apps. You got the invite code. But I've heard somebody talking about their kid, their son, like teenage son, rode in a Waymo and it was fine. Everything was cool. So are all you open to driving in a driverless car? I'm open to it. I would give it a shot. I would be a little bit wary the first time. I'm probably not going to be looking at my phone. I'll be looking at the car like, don't crash. Wait. But I think I can get used to it. Are y'all open to that? Riding in a driverless vehicle? So a bunch of people saying, no way, you're scared of it. I would try it. I would get if they had a driverless Uber, because here's the thing about the driverless cars is that the prices are cheaper. So if you were to get an Uber that was going to cost you $25, the Waymo is going to be like $12. So all they're doing is coming in and competing. So they're going to undercut Uber and Lyft on price because they don't have to pay a human. They're keeping all the money and they're just paying their technology. And once they get the technology right, it's done. So eventually, everybody who's listening to this, all of you keep living for the next 10 years. Eventually, ain't going to be no people in cars. All right. No people in the driver's seat. Excuse me. There won't be people in the driver's seat. There'll just be cars that just drive by themselves. How many of you will buy a driverless car? Or how many of you will buy a car that has driverless capabilities? I would do that. So let's say that you have a car, right? And the car, you can drive it. You get in the driver's seat and you can drive. Or you can put it into driverless mode and not do anything and just let the car ride. And you could just mess around on your phone and reply to all your emails while the car drives you 30 minutes to the airport. That's coming in the next 10 years, that there will be cars that actually just do this. They just drive. You just push a button and it drives for you and you don't have to do anything. And there will be Ubers that do this. Well, it's not going to be Uber. It's going to be Waymos or whatever. Actually, let me take that back. Uber and Lyft are going to adjust because when Waymo starts coming into other cities, what's going to happen is Uber and Lyft, they're going to get the technology. They're going to develop the technology. They're probably working on it right now, as a matter of fact, to where they have driverless cars. And then when you go in Uber and you say something like, let's say I want to ride to Fort Lauderdale Airport. So I'm going to go on Uber right now just to tell you this is what's going to happen. All right, just to give you all a preview of what's coming. So I'm opening the Uber app right now. And let's say I want to go to Fort Lauderdale. Last time I was in Uber, I went to Fort Lauderdale, so it came up. So Fort Lauderdale Airport right now, in Uber to Fort Lauderdale for me is $53.40. And that's a Uber Comfort. Now, last time I drove in an Uber Comfort, the car was not comfortable, and I complained to Uber. They gave me $5. It was not enough, but I like the Uber. I like the Premier. I might do an Uber Premier. Is $92. I would do that if it's a business expense because I can write that off tax wise. And I might do the Uber XL. The problem with Uber XL is it doesn't mean the car is very nice. Sometimes it could be a beat up ass car, but it's just big. I'd rather it be a nice car. I'd rather pay extra for a nice car than a big car that's beat up. But usually Uber XLs, they're usually nice cars. I did an Uber XL once and it was like a Escalade and it was a nice car. But I also done Uber XLs and it'll be like a fucking minivan. So you got to be careful with those. But what's going to happen is, I digress. What's going to happen is you're going to get on Uber and it's going to show you all the options. One of the options is going to be a driverless car and the price is going to be significantly lower. So what I just tell you all, you are going to be incentivized to take the driverless car. Because what if you only got $20 to spend on your ride, but the Uber with a person costs $45, but the Uber with no person costs $12? Are you going to take the $45 one? How many of you would do that? Put 45, you would do the 45. Put 12, you would put 12. If that happens. So you call Uber or you call up Uber on your phone and they say, all right, we'll take you to the airport. If you want a car with a person, it's $45. You want a car without a person, it's $12. Which one are you taking? You taking the 45 or the 12? All right, so Carla, you would take the 45. I'm taking the 12. I'm keeping my money. I'm taking the 12 and I will take a risk. And if something goes wrong with that car, then my wife and kids will be rich because we're going to sue the hell out of them. But I will take my chance with the $12. I'm taking the $12 ride. So a bunch of you saying 45. Yeah, it's going to be cheaper. They're going to incentivize you to start taking it. And all they're going to do is look at the data. Uber and Lyft are going to look at the data and Waymo and whoever else comes along. Tesla might jump in the game. And all they're going to say is, all right, there are so many people taking the driverless car that by 2000 and I don't think it's going to take that long, everybody. I say by 2050, and that's being very conservative. Let's say it's 2025. I say by 2040. I'm going to say 2040, you will not have the option of having a driver drive you an Uber. Actually, let me back up. You will have the option, but it's going to cost you a lot of money. There will be drivers, but it's going to cost a lot of money to have a driver drive you. Number one. Number two, is going to take forever for that car to get there because they're not going to have as many human drivers. And number three, the drivers are probably going to be like the best of the best because there won't be as many opportunities to be an Uber driver anymore because the competition is going to be driverless cars. So people who drive Uber now, any of you listening to this who drives Uber or Lyft, your job is about to be taken by technology. You probably already know that, but if you didn't know, now you know. So again, increased competition in every space. I'm talking about cars because I can explain that pretty well, but healthcare, we want the same thing. We want there to be some competition in healthcare. We want the government to help that. And this is where RFK is going to jump in. Next, less government control over personal media choices. I don't know if all of you know this, but the government can make a phone call and get the media to put out whatever story they want. The left tends to have more sway over the media than the right politically. They can make any story that they want. Nancy Pelosi talked about this. I don't know who she was talking to when she said it, but there's a video clip. And she calls it the rap smear. The rap smear is when the government puts out a story to the media takes the story and they all go put the same story out at the same time. This is how they can smear a person's name. So everybody in the media puts out the same story about the same person with the same negative spin all at the same time. All the everyday citizens see the story. You see the same story 30 times. Eventually, you're going to believe that it must be true. And now you have just stained that person's name so effectively that a lot of people don't see that person as credible anymore because of the bad story about them. This is what they did to Donald Trump. Now, the thing is, Trump had enough support on the other side, counter support, that he was able to overcome it. But what if you are not that? What if you don't have that kind of support that Donald Trump has, which most people don't, and they did it to you? And what we want the government to do is have less control over these kind of things. Thank you, Carla, for the lightning bolt. So we want them to have less control over this. Next, school choice options, including charters and vouchers. How many of you are in favor of school choice? Put choice in the comments if you are in favor of school choice. School choice, let's just keep it very simple to mean, as a parent, you can send your kid to whatever school you want to send them to, not the school that's closest to them or the school that the government says you have to go to You just pick whatever school you want to send your kid to and you send them there. How many of you are in favor of school choice? If you're against it, put against. I think most people are in favor of school choice. So why is there so much pushback against the concept of school choice? It's a great question. I will tell you after these messages. So what I'm going to do right now, y'all see me drinking this water. I'm going to run to the restroom. This is going to take me 2 minutes. I'm going to go to the restroom. I'm going to close both doors, my office door and the bathroom door. It's going to take me 2 minutes. Let me go to the restroom. I'll be right back, and then we'll continue after these messages. Give me 1 second. Let me go to the restroom. Everybody wait 2 minutes. I'll be right back to the bathroom. All right, I'm back. Thank you, everybody, for your patience. So what we're talking about here is school choice and why would anybody be against school choice? Because all of you just said school choice is okay. So the pushback against school choice is the teachers' unions. That's the issue. We got any teachers' union members listening to this? Not to attack you. No, I got a lot of friends in the teachers' union, as a matter of fact. People who are actually union teachers. So my mom is a union teacher. One of my best friends from college is a union teacher. Her husband is a union teacher. I know a whole lot of people who are teachers, who are members of the teachers union in the United States. We got any teachers union members in here? Again, I'm not going to attack you if you're a teachers union member. I have a lot of respect for teachers. It's a thankless job, and you're helping shape the next generation of people. So thankless job. At the same time, I am not a fan of the teachers union. I'm a fan of teachers. I'm not a fan of teachers union. The teachers union is the entity. They're an entity that has a lot of pull and a lot of power. So if you want to know why school choice gets any pushback whatsoever, is because the teachers union fights against it. Now, why does the teachers union care if you have a choice as to what school your kid goes to? Because they understand that most people, when they rank school options, you have private schools, probably the highest level, probably right next to homeschooling. Any parent who wants to homeschool probably has decided this is my best option, or private school, which means you pay money to send your kid to school, and money like you got to write a check. Down here in South Florida, I don't know how much of the private schools where you all are. There are private schools down here in South Florida where kindergarten is $30,000 a year. You want to send your kid to kindergarten at the private school is $30,000 a year, and the price only goes up the older your kid gets. So high school is like $50,000. So private schools cost a lot of money for money. Many people cannot afford to pay that type of money. And then you got homeschooling where you can kind of do it on your own, but you have to invest time. Most people put public school, and then you got charter schools. Those are schools that operate by charter. They get held to a different set of standards than public schools. And then you have public schools, probably at the bottom of the list. Public schools are usually ranked at the bottom of the list. Now, what does this have to do with teachers and teachers union? The issue with the teachers and the teachers unions is that most teachers in the teachers union operate in public schools. They work in the public school system. And at the same time, most parents look at the public school system as the worst possible schooling option available. You got the public school, you got the charter school, you got private school, and homeschooling. Most people put public schools at the bottom of the list, but that's where most of the teachers are at. So if you introduce school choice and parents can send their kids wherever they want to send them, guess what? Many kids are not going to do. They're not going to go to public schools. So if there are fewer kids going to public schools, more kids going to charter schools or private schools, how they're going to get the money, I don't know, or homeschooling, and fewer people in public schools, what's going to happen is public schools are going to have to close because nobody's going to the school. Just yesterday, as a matter of fact, I'm a graduate of Penn State University. I got an email from the president of the university that they're about to close a bunch of campuses at Penn State. And the reason why they're closing campuses is because the state of Pennsylvania, a lot of people are moving out of Pennsylvania. And therefore, most of the people in the local branches, not the main Penn State is going to close, but they have a bunch of branches. Most of the people at the local branches come from those towns. And because there are fewer people in those towns, they're not getting enough students, and they're going to shut down entire campuses at Penn State. And it's the same thing that will happen at public schools. If there are fewer students going to the school, we don't need the school anymore. We're just going to shut down the whole school. And that means if they keep shutting down schools, let's say there were 1,000 public schools, right? There are more than that. Let's say there are 1,000 public schools in the country. And now fewer kids are going to public schools. So now you don't need 1,000 public schools. You only need 500 public schools. Now, those 500 public schools that are now have to be closed, there were, let's just keep the numbers simple, there were 10 teachers in every school. So those 10 teachers in every one of those 500 schools that gets closed, that's 5,000 teachers. Part of the teachers union, now they have nowhere to teach because there are no more public schools for them to teach at. Now that's going to lead to a couple things. Maybe increased competition, and only the best teachers will be teaching at public schools, which is a good thing for the parents who end up still sending their kids to public school. But also 500 teachers without a job was a bad thing. Those 500 teachers are not going to have a job anymore. And those are the ones who are not as good, right? Those are the ones who lost the competition for the best teachers in public schools. They don't have a job. Can they go work at a charter school? No, because they can't meet the standards there either. Can they go work at a private school? No, because they can't perform at that level either. What the hell are these teachers going to do? Well, they're going to have to go do something else. And the teachers union doesn't want that to happen. Why does the teachers union not want that to happen? Because every member of the teachers union pays dues. And if half of your dues paying membership leaves, well, guess what happens to your money? It gets cut in half. Now, again, what I just tell you about a capitalistic society, when everything is based around money, people will do things to protect and increase their money. The teachers union cares about money. If you let them tell it, they'll never talk about money. You let them tell it, they care about educating the next generation, and teachers do a thankless job, and teachers don't get paid enough. All true. Does not make what I just told you also not true, but they will never tell you the part that I told you. They'll tell you the part that they want to tell you. They won't tell you the part that I just told you, is that they won't have the money anymore. Now, why does it matter if the teachers union has money? That matters as well. Let's answer that question. If the teachers union does not have money, guess what they also won't have? Influence. See, if you don't have any money, you can't go to DC and lobby a senator or a congressperson or the president to do anything, because the only way you can lobby somebody is you have to have the resources to get their attention. And to get somebody's attention in a capitalistic society, what do you need, class? Let's all say it together. Money. You need money. The teachers union has power because they have money. The reason they have money is because they got all these teachers in the union. Every time these teachers get a paycheck, part of that check, in addition to their taxes, part of that check is going to the union, and the union's job is to protect their jobs. So the reason why school choices gets fought against so hard is because every election cycle, when someone comes up talking about school choice and letting kids pick the school they want to go to, the teachers union says, oh, no, you don't. Hell no. And they take their money. They open their war chest. They take their money and they fight against whoever is talking about giving parents the right to choose what school to send your kids to, because the teachers union wants to keep control of that so that you have to go to public school, so that the teachers have to keep teaching at public school so they can keep getting paid, and the cut of their check goes to union dues, and the teachers union can stay in power. When Donald Trump talks about draining the swamp, this is part of the swamp. The union of teachers, again, teaching at the lowest common denominator of education in America, which is the public school. Now, I am a product of public schools. I went to public school K through 12, and I guess you could say I am a success story of public schooling. But what I always tell people is that I became successful despite my public school education, not because of my public school education. Moreover, more importantly than all of that, I am a product, not of public schooling. I'm a product of a two-parent home with involved parents, specifically my mother, who was on top of her kids and making sure that we did what we were supposed to do educationally. That's the reason why I was successful in the public school system, not because of the school, but because of what was happening at home. And any of you who's ever done any teaching, you know anybody who's in the teaching industry, they will all tell you this. They'll co-sign what I'm about to say right now, is that the quality of the teaching in school has a whole lot to do with what's happening at home for the kids. If there's a bunch of kids in your class who have a crazy home situation, they're going to come to school and be crazy. But if they have a good home situation, you can send your kid to a terrible school and that kid will still do well because they can't act crazy at school because their parents taught them better than them. That's what the school system is really about. It's not about the teachers. You can have average teachers, but a student going to a school with average teachers, if they have a solid situation at home, mom and dad, then they will do very well in school, or just mom or just dad. Anyway, moving on. More focus on practical skills and financial literacy. This is, if school is going to teach something, that's what it should teach. Schools don't teach financial literacy. Y'all notice that? Any of you who has a financial education, and it doesn't mean you have a finance degree, because I don't have one, but financial education, meaning you've done some reading, some studying, you've taken some courses, etc., on anything that has to do with finance and money. Do you notice that they don't teach that in school? Schools don't teach that. Why do schools not teach people finance and money? Why do they not teach you that? Why do schools not teach sales? Why do schools not teach entrepreneurship and starting a business? Why do schools not teach these things? The reason the schools don't teach these is because if you were to know these things, you would opt out of the system. And the education system in America was created originally, the system that we have now, it's been modified, of course, but it was originally created to create more employees to fill the factories during the Industrial Revolution. So they didn't need you to be smart. They didn't need you to understand business or understand money or understand autonomy as a person. They needed you to understand that you are a product of the system. You need to go into the system. You need to spend the next 60 years of your life working in the system. And when you retire, we'll give you a percentage of what you were earning working in the system. And the system owns and controls you for the rest of your life. That's the system. That's the whole of the system. School was just designed to get you ready to operate within the system. And think about how it works in school. You show up, you sit down, shut up, fold your hands, and wait for somebody to tell you what to do. Usually that's a teacher. What happens when you get out of school? You get a job, you show up, shut up, sit down, wait for somebody, that's your boss, to tell you what to do. And they give you a check. And in school, they give you a report card. At your job, you get a paycheck. And then you retire, and hopefully you can live on 40% of what you were earning at your job. That's the system that the United States designed back in the Industrial Revolution. Now it's a little bit different now because you may have to actually think and use some actual skills at your job, but the system is not that much different. It's still designed pretty much the same way. How do we know this? What do the best students end up doing when they get out of school? Do they start businesses? The best students in school, the valedictorians at colleges, they go and get the best jobs. Why do the best students get the best jobs? Is it because getting the best job requires you to be really smart and the best students are really smart? No. The reason that the best students get the best jobs is because being the best student is about how well you operate within the given system. That's what being a great student is all about. The best students in school are not necessarily the smartest people. They get the best grades because they operate very well within the structure of the schooling system. That's why if you get a C on the test, that's because you are operating averagely in the system. If you get an A, you are operating really, really well in the system. Now, does that mean that the A student is actually intellectually smarter than the C student? The answer is hell no, because we know there are a lot of people who are known as famous entrepreneurs and business people and thinkers who were not great students. Some of them didn't even graduate from college. So people who were the valedictorians of their same classes, are they smarter than these people? No, not necessarily. Because again, smartness is a very tricky term, subjective term. But intellectually, just because you get A's on everything in school does not mean you're smart. It just means you're good at following a process. Now, why does that matter? Because people who are really good at following a process, you know what they look like to potential employers? This person will be a great employee. Why? Because here at this business we have a process, we have a system, and the people who do best to help us move forward as a business are the people who are best at following the system. So we're going to go to colleges and we're going to get all the top students and we're going to hire them to come work for us, because what they just did in school for 12 years or 16 years after college, they're going to do great doing the same thing for the next 40 years working for us. This is the way it works. So this is why the best students get the best jobs. So if you want to get a really good job, well, be a good student if you're in college right now, or you should have been. And if you want to give yourself other opportunities to succeed, even though you were an average or worse student. I was a very average student, not because I lacked intellect, but because I didn't try. Because everything I'm explaining to you now, I started to understand this when I was in college. When I got introduced to entrepreneurship, I started to understand, wait a minute, why are they not teaching this? And what you need to do is get a financial education. You need to get an entrepreneurial education. You need to understand how investment and entrepreneurship and money work. And when you understand those things, I don't have to tell you what to do next, because once you get that understanding, you're going to start seeing things and possibilities for yourself that you otherwise would not see just based on what you learned in formal schooling. I don't care what school you went to and what you studied. It doesn't matter. The system is the same. My degree from college is in, I tend to forget what my degree is in. My degree is in business with a focus in management and marketing. So when somebody asks me that, would you get a degree? And I say business management and marketing, they say, oh, well, you run a business now. That's perfect. School sets you up for that. Bullshit. No, it didn't. A business degree sets you up for getting a job working at a business, not starting a business. At least my degree. Now, I don't know what they're doing in colleges these days. I'm sure there are many colleges who have entrepreneurial majors, and they have tracks for that and teaching that. Hopefully they have actual entrepreneurs teaching the classes, not full-time professors teaching classes on entrepreneurship, which makes zero sense. But I don't know. Some of you can let me know. I don't know what's happening in that system these days. I'm checked out of that system. So moving on. Voter ID laws. I mean, we kind of already talked about this. Voter ID laws is similar to the border thing, is that if somebody's going to vote, you just got to have ID. Again, who has a problem with that? Why would anybody have a problem with someone having ID in order to vote? The Democrats tried to make a stink out of this. They really don't have a leg to stand on this point. So enough of that. U.S. energy independence. I talked about this a couple days ago when I did the stream on why MAGA is good for America. I did one on why MAGA is bad and one why MAGA is good. Energy independence. We don't want to be dependent on other countries for anything. Less U.S. involvement in foreign conflicts. We give a lot of money to other countries for things that have nothing to do with us. Trump touched on this strongly yesterday in his presentation. Why are we giving all this money to these countries that, again, they're in conflicts that have nothing to do with us? I understand we're in certain alliances, etc. Why are we giving more money to help them than the countries next to them are giving to help them? Again, it doesn't logically make any sense. People can only make emotional arguments to support this point, but there's no logical reason why we need to be doing this, and we need to stop doing it, because that money could be going to help Americans in a more effective way. Stronger stance against known adversaries. Depends on who you consider an adversary. A lot of people think that our country is an adversary. Okay, if you consider that, fine, but what are they doing to us right now? I don't see them doing anything bad to us right now. They're doing something bad to the U country. They're not doing anything to us. And the C country, that's a whole lot of financial things, and Trump is all over that one. What else we got? A couple more things, and we will wrap this up. More state control, less federal control. This is the last point that I'm gonna go to, and then we'll take questions. More state control, less federal control. A lot of people don't think about this consciously, but the United States of America is called the United States for a reason. The United States, that means it's 50 states that get to pretty much make whatever decision that they want to make. There are some decisions that are made at the federal level, but for the most part, the United States means 50 states